Hello everyone!
Hi guys, the video you're about to watch is a Building the Philippines coined phrase, I'm a 10%er. So enjoy. All right guys, I'm here with my good friend Jeff, who's been up to the house several times as he visits the Philippines. And I want to talk a little bit about being a 10%er. In the last video that you guys saw, Sean has been here in the Philippines for 6 months and he's fully retired. Jeff is about to be retired and is planning to join the team of the 10%ers.
That's right.
So Jeff, talk a little bit about your significant other.
I met Jenny, who is now my fiance, in April of 2022. We first met in person in July of 2022.
Okay.
Which is when I first came. That was my first trip of 4.
So you've been to the Philippines 4 times?
4 times.
Okay.
Usually at least 3 weeks because it's a long trip to get here, obviously. 2 of my trips I was here for a full 4 weeks. 2 of the trips I was here for 3 weeks each. So I've spent several weeks in the Philippines, but at disparate times.
Now, have you visited any other islands other than Negros Oriental?
No. Cebu technically, but I didn't go to Cebu City. I just went to swim with the whale sharks.
Okay. So you've been to two islands?
2 islands.
Okay. So what's your initial thoughts? You've been here 4 times. What's your initial thoughts of the Philippines itself?
My first impression, my first visit here, what struck me was how friendly the people are, the native people, expats as well, but just the warm and welcome feeling that you get from most Filipinos really struck me. Now that having been here on now multiple occasions, I wouldn't say that's always the case, but that is generally the case. I think people really are friendly and welcoming in the Philippines.
So what do you do for a living? Because you're still working in the U.S.
I am a college professor. I have been for 26 years. Prior to that, I worked in the banking industry for 18 years prior to that, but I've been a college economics professor for the last 24.
Okay. So you're planning to retire in the Philippines. So talk a little bit about when did the idea come to you? How many years back? At what moment did you say, hey, I think about moving to the Philippines?
Well, that's actually a 2-part answer. I have been attracted to really Southeast Asia, the Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, since I was in my 20s. So going on 40 years, I've been attracted to Southeast Asia, but never visited just because of time constraints and work and family commitments. I have been sailing since I was 12 years old. I've done a lot of sailing almost all over the world, but never in Southeast Asia. And Philippines was always a bucket list location for me to go sailing. Interestingly, Philippines is not a big sailing destination. You don't see a lot of sailboats in the Philippines. You do see them, but it's not a big sailing destination. I think there are parts of the Philippines that are, but not where I've been. But that was my initial attraction to the Philippines. And then I really, in earnest, probably about in 2020, may seem odd, but it was partially because of the shutdown due to COVID. We were all trapped at home, couldn't go anywhere. I started watching a lot more YouTube videos than I had before, and I always tended to gravitate toward travel videos anyway. And just always thought in the back of my mind and reminded myself, I've a lifelong dream, a bucket list item, if you will, is to go to the Philippines. I've wanted to do that for many years. And I knew I was getting close to being able to retire at that time. Of course, that's been now 3.5, 4 years ago. But I really started in earnest doing more research, written research, and watching YouTube videos and so forth about what it's like to travel in the Philippines. My intent was not to come to the Philippines to meet my next wife. That was never my intent. My intent was to come and sail and scuba dive and snorkel and just have a water adventure because I'm a water type person. I love being in the water and on the water.
Okay.
But because of COVID, that dream had to be put on hold because the Philippines, like pretty much everywhere else in the world, was on lockdown and nobody could travel into or out of the Philippines. So I kind of had to sit on that dream and just dream through YouTube videos for a good couple of years before, I think it was technically late February of 2022 when the Philippines opened back up for international travel.
So you've been here 4 times. So would you give that advice to anybody sitting back in their first world country? You know, maybe they're getting close to retirement age, saying, I want to get out of the rat race. The cost of living is so high. Would you give advice just to sell everything and move to the Philippines, or actually?
No, absolutely not. I would not give that advice. I know some people have taken that plunge and it's worked out for some and maybe not worked out so well for others. Sounds cliche, but I think the boots on the ground rule really does apply. I can't imagine doing that not having been to a location before.
Right.
And I'm just glad the way I've done it. I'm not saying the way I've done it is necessarily correct. It has worked for me. I must say the first time I came to the Philippines, I absolutely fell in love with it. I felt like it was almost home at that point, even from the very first visit.
Yes.
So I really think, all the YouTube videos I watched, and again, because I was locked up during COVID, I watched hundreds of hours of YouTube videos of various channels of people in the Philippines. And that doesn't do it justice. It's great. It's great homework, but until you actually get here and physically experience the culture here, you don't know what it's like, and you don't know, and it's not for everybody.
Right.
I will say that. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
There are things, and I'm sure we'll probably talk about those. There's good and bad. There's no country in the world that's perfect. The Philippines is certainly not perfect.
100%. Yeah. And we laugh about, selling everything and moving to the Philippines and never been here. But guys do that. And I think it's important for anyone doing videos to really try to get the message out there. Come and visit. You can get a 30-day free visa. You can extend an immigration very easily.
It's easy.
Come and visit. Like you said, it's not for everybody, and make sure it's something that you're interested in before you take the plunge.
Absolutely. And if you're from the United States, I know there's people watching all over the world, but if you're from the U.S., and actually most places, it's a long enough trip that you're going to want to be here. To me, anything less than 2 weeks would not be worth the flight over here, truthfully, because it's a long, grueling flight. You need time. I think a month is kind of a sweet spot for your first visit. That's what I did. I was here for a month my first time. It flew by. I tried to do way too much like everybody does on vacation. I tried to fit in everything, and I was actually worn out by the end of the first time. After the second, third, and fourth trips, I knew better than to wear myself out like that.
So you're planning your retirement now. You've been planning it for a while. Talk a little bit about some of the things that you're doing in the U.S. to plan for your retirement here in the Philippines.
I am very fortunate that I've had 2 very good careers that I tell everybody all the time, I would go back to either of my careers and do them all over again. I loved my career in banking, which I did for a long time. I transitioned, which is kind of a pretty big leap of career, into teaching. I would do that again. They were both very good to me financially. So I am I realize probably a little bit of an enviable position that I've got the financial ability to travel as much as I do. At this point, I intend to maintain a home in the U.S. I have a nice home in Southwest Ohio where I grew up and where I now work. I think at some point I will sell that and spend far more time here than there. But my daughter just gave birth to my first grandchild a week ago.
Hey,
who I'm
congratulations.
not able to meet yet.
Yes.
And so, that there's that pull to get me back and be involved with family, because I've got 2 adult children who are involved with other people, and now I have the grandchild. So I have some commitments that I feel like, at least for the next 2 to 4 years, are going to keep me coming back to the United States. 4 years is probably when I will pull the trigger to retire. I could retire anytime, but as long as I enjoy my job and it's still I have a lot of flexibility. As a college professor, I get 4 weeks off at December. That's why I tend to come to the Philippines in December. I get 4 weeks off, and I get summers off. Summers may not be the perfect time to be in the Philippines, but there's no real bad time to be in the Philippines. Philippines. I know there's a rainy season, but frankly, I've been here during the rainy season and had some of the most beautiful weather I've experienced in the Philippines.
Right.
So it's going to rain anywhere. But
Yeah, I mean, they say rainy season and it rains for 45 minutes and then it's sunny for the rest of the day.
Right.
So you've actually joined the club here in Darwin. You recently purchased a home.
Correct.
You took the plunge on your 4th trip.
I did.
So just highlights.
I've run the gamut of my initial intention was to build a house in large part because of Wilma and Greg. I watched their channel from the start. It's something I thought I would enjoy doing. I still think I would enjoy doing that. But one of the things I learned from Greg was you cannot build, and I think this would apply anywhere in the world, frankly, but you don't want to build a house if you can't be on site a significant amount of time during the construction of that house. And with me still working and only being able to spend, at this point, at most a 4-month stretch at a time being in the Philippines, you can't build a house in 4 months.
Right.
So it just scared me too much. That was my intent. That was really a firmly entrenched goal up until about, honestly, 4 months ago. I kind of gave up on the idea of buying land because I knew I couldn't commit myself. I didn't want to wait 4 years when I actually did retire to then build a home. I want a place that I can come to now. Mm-hmm. I've stayed in very nice hotels and beach resorts, and Airbnbs are great. That's what I tend to gravitate toward to now. But it's not the same as your own home. I want a place in the Philippines to call home because I do intend to, as the years go on, especially once I am retired, I will be spending at least 6 months per year in the Philippines.
Yeah, okay.
At least.
Now, your 4 trips, what would you say is the best part of the Philippines?
I mentioned earlier the people, how warm and welcoming the people are. But I do love the outdoors. There's so many outdoor activities you can get involved in the Philippines. If you enjoy being outside, I can't imagine you couldn't find something that you would want to do. And you don't have to love water. Obviously, we're surrounded by water here, and there's a lot of fun stuff to do in and on the water, which is what I tend to gravitate toward. But if you like hiking or you just simply like running, frankly, I'm amazed at the number of people that, in fact, the guy I'm buying a house from is running a marathon in Manila in a couple of weeks.
Oh, wow.
And he's avid into that. And I'm always amazed at the number of bicyclists that you see riding bikes around the Dumaguete area. So if you're an outdoor person, there's pretty much whatever you want to do, you can do outdoors.
We were talking lunchtime where I said, Wilma and I are not in the house much during the day. We're always outside. Now, we're not necessarily, driving to the nearest waterfall, but we're just out on our property enjoying ourselves. We're gardening, we're swimming, or just sitting outside.
That's what I do in the U.S., and that's what I would want to do here. And of course, in Southwest Ohio, in January through March,
you're not sitting outside. No, not at all.
And I don't like winter. I don't mind saying I don't use the word hate very often, but I must tell you, I hate winter.
Now, we did touch on this a little bit, but I want to talk about it a little more. There's a lot of emails of people that email Building the Philippines, and they're in their home country and they're thinking about retiring. A lot of them have been here before, some of them have not. It's a mixture. Now, you've been here 4 times, so what advice would you give them as someone who's on the fence about either coming out and taking a look or they may be married to a Filipina and they're in the middle of the rat race and saying, maybe I would like to retire where my wife grew up, but I'm not sure. I'm a little nervous. I'm a little scared. I've never lived outside the U.S. That was me a few years ago. What advice do you have for them?
I had that same fear, actually. In fact, most of my family, even to this day, are stunned that I've even been here 4 times, much less just bought a house and intend to move here on a more permanent basis. I experienced that fear, certainly. But you got to get outside of that comfort zone, I think. You realize it's not that different. Sure, there are big cultural differences between the U.S. and the Philippines. For whatever reason, I've heard a number of people say this, and I absolutely agree. You feel like it's a slower pace here, but the traffic doesn't seem like it's a slower pace. It seems like it's a very populated area, and yet it still has a very small town feel. And I know just in my 4 trips here, I relax far more here than I ever do at home.
Yeah, 100%.
Far more relaxed.
And I think the highway, Filipinos, the natives, they like to live close to the highway. If you did some type of a research of percentage of population that's within 1 kilometer of a national highway, it's probably
It's a bunch.
80% of the population.
Easy. Yeah.
And Americans like to spread out a little more.
Yeah, we're suburban.
Yeah, absolutely, without question. So you're right. When you drive, I mean, all the businesses sometimes are 10 feet from the highway.
Right.
And a hard time to park just to run in to get your vegetables or your fruits because everyone is so close to the highway. So that's a good point. But yes, the pace here is definitely slower. And I can see it in myself. Now that we have the house built, I can see that Wilma and I are slowing down. If we can't get to something, we say now, we'll get to it tomorrow.
What I've learned here is, and I tend at home, I'll be very honest, I tend to be pretty high-strung type A. That will not serve you well in the Philippines. You just have to learn to slow down, but it's not that hard. It really isn't. You find yourself, because of the cultural aspect and just their very nature, these people aren't in a hurry. Right. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, it can be frustrating. There can be frustration associated with that, but it does kind of cause you to slow down, and you have to realize, especially when you're retired, and this is where I can only partially relate to this because I'm not fully retired yet. I jokingly tell people I feel like I'm semi-retired because I do have a lot of flexibility in my job.
Right.
But you will be forced to slow down here, and I think that would be a benefit to most people. You just have to get used to that.
Right. It takes time to unwind.
Right.
Without question. Okay, last question. You said you're going to basically retire in a couple of years. So let's go out 5 years. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
I will absolutely 1,000%, and if my boss is watching, he knows this, be retired within 5 years. Probably retired within no more than 4, truthfully. So I see myself absolutely 100% retired. I see myself living at minimum 6 months per year in the Philippines, if not more. I see that probably what will happen is when I retire in 4 years, I'm going to spend at least 6 months, maybe more, because we now have a house here.
Right.
And I think I'm going to love it so much that it's hard for me to go back to the U.S. now every time I go back, truthfully. I think that's going to get harder and harder. So I may get to the point where I do up and sell my house in the U.S. and consider this my forever home. I could see that happening. That's not my 5-year plan necessarily, but I can certainly see that happening.
Or it could simply
within
be
10 years, certainly.
6, 6, 7, 5, 8, 4. Right?
It could gradually get to the point where I'm spending a month or 2 in the United States.
And then at that point, it probably makes sense to sell the home at that point. Yeah.
Right.
It's a good place to be, isn't it?
Oh, it's a wonderful place to be.
Isn't it great?
Yeah, it is.
It's great.
And what what I have just been able to purchase a house for here, and it's a beautiful home, open floor plan, 2-bedroom, but it's a large 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, beautiful, overlooking view. What I've been able to accomplish here in that same property with any ocean view in the United States, Greg, you know this, it'd be $1 million property.
Sure.
I don't have anywhere near that.
Correct.
Invested in this property. So you can live cheap. Now, that said, and Greg and I were talking about this earlier, there has been, and I think it was largely true during COVID, to be fair. There was this idea that you could come to the Philippines and rent for $350, $400 a month and live in a really nice place on the beach. I'm here to tell you, folks, that probably was true 3 years ago.
Right.
That is not true, at least in the Dumaguete area today. I can tell you what you would get for $350, $400 a month. You wouldn't want to live.
Yeah, 100%. I think inflation has bit the Philippines as hard as it bit other countries.
Indeed.
When I moved here 2 years ago, in Leyte, you could find rentals for $300 a month. Here in this area, you can't even find anything close to that for under $500 a month. So that's a big increase in just 2 years.
And that said, to be fair, if you were willing and able to pay $750 a month, which is by U.S. standards low rent, if you were willing to pay that, you would live in a very nice house for $750 a month.
Correct.
So it is much cheaper to live in the Philippines. I don't want to give anybody the impression that I think it's not cost effective to live in the Philippines. It's far cheaper to live here.
But you do need a retirement, and you do need upfront money.
Absolutely.
Call it setup money.
Yeah, I watch these videos all the time where somebody says you can live on $1,000 or $1,500 a month, and technically, is that possible? Probably. Is it a lifestyle that you're going to want to live in retirement? Not for me.
Yeah, that's especially if you're paying $750 for rent,
Right.
because you want a certain level of home. That leaves you $750. That would be very difficult. Doable, yes,
Right.
but you're going to live very native.
And Jenny, my fiance, who is from here, she grew up in the Dumaguete area. She really notices it even at the farm markets where you go and get fresh fruits and vegetables. The prices have gone up
Absolutely.
pretty significantly just in the 2 years that I've been coming here.
Yeah, without question.
So inflation has hit the Philippines.
Yeah, without question. Inflation is definitely, but like you said, it's still much cheaper than, say, the United States.
Yes, absolutely. You
With-
could live
without
a
question.
very nice lifestyle here on the same amount of retirement income
Yeah.
that in the United States you might struggle on that income.
100%. Well, I appreciate your time, Jeff. I'm glad you came up for another visit.
Greg, you've been a good friend. We appreciate you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And enjoy your channel.
Thank you. So you joined the 10%ers, and welcome to the club.